Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Ben Stone and you're watching canalgratis.com. And the last time I left you, I was in this boat on the water catching muskies. Since then, ice has begun to form in the Minnesota Metro. So I'm in that transition period where I can't really do anything, can't really get out on the ice, can't really get in the boat. So I figured today would be a perfect time to follow up a video that you guys absolutely crushed. And that was don't make these 5 mistakes muskie fishing. And with us heading into kind of the postseason of the muskie season, I thought it'd be fun to dive into 5 more muskie mistakes that you should try to avoid making. These are gonna be a little bit more advanced. If you didn't already see that video, I'll have it linked somewhere up here. If you aren't already subscribed, please subscribe. Do my best to make the best muskie content that I can among lots of other multi-species content. So hit the subscribe button. With that out of the way, let's get into the first mistake. Out of all the mistakes I'm going to cover in this video, this is probably the broadest and one of the most important in my eyes, and that is having the proper tools to chase muskies. When you boat a muskie, there are a lot of tools that you're going to want to have to ensure that you take care of that fish as effectively as possible. We're just going to run through these very quick. The first one, if you're a pike fisherman, you'll already have one of these, is a jaw spreader. This just helps get that fish's mouth open so you can get in there, get access to the hooks to get them out and or cut the hooks. Very inexpensive tool. These only run for about $3 or $4, so it's definitely something you should have. You're not always gonna need it, but it's one of those things that you're really gonna appreciate having. Now, if you're a fisherman, you probably have a pair of pliers to remove hooks, but with muskies, it's really helpful to have a couple of different kinds. Right now I run 3. I run a jaw clamp hook out remover, and I have 2 long nose needle nose pliers. I have a straight edge, and I also have one with a curve. The curved one is really helpful for getting in at those finicky angles to get those hooks out. Among that, these are just good to have for lures. Sometimes your lures kind of have mishaps, and it's really good to always have a couple of options for pairs of pliers. Finally, I think this is the most overlooked tool, but a hook cutters or Nipex. Muskies eat baits pretty aggressively, and it doesn't always happen in the most graceful way possible. So sometimes the most effective way to get that hook out of the fish is to use a Nipex or hook cutters. Cut those hooks, that fish is gonna be just fine. It's gonna save you a lot of time and wear and tear on the fish. A little bonus on top of that, carry spare hooks. I've got a tackle box filled with spare hooks because in my time of muskie fishing, I've cut plenty of hooks. So it's just good to have backups. You never know what's gonna go wrong. This next one is something that I actually didn't really pay attention to until 2 years ago, but that is using the right leader for the right type of bait. Now that might seem a little absurd, but with all the different kinds of musky lures on the market, it is really important to keep in mind the leader that you're using. There's 3 main types of leaders in my eyes for the casting side of musky fishing. That is a straight wire leader, a fluorocarbon, and a strand wire leader. In my opinion, all 3 of those have their specific place. I'm gonna cover just the broad specs of that, but there's a really good in-depth video by Doug Wagner that I can link down below. But basically, your straight wire leaders are great for bucktails and your top waters. These are the lightest leaders. They're gonna give you the strongest connection to that bait. And with bucktails, it's actually gonna act sort of as a vibration boost because this leader is gonna rattle around quite a bit. I also really like short leaders. They help you a lot in the figure 8. The other popular leader is a fluorocarbon leader. This is really great for your pull pause baits or your jerk baits. Fluorocarbon really helps kind of maneuver those baits really effectively in the figure 8. And of course, you have that in between with the strand wire leaders. If you're looking for one leader to use, I definitely recommend the strand wires. That's kind of what I use on my swim baits. Some of my pull pause baits, I will run a strand wire leader, but mostly I'm using those 3 type of leaders to chase muskies. A fluorocarbon leader will work for everything, but if you're using a fluorocarbon leader with something like, say, a top water, you're gonna notice that it's gonna bring your top water down a little bit. So by using different types of leaders for different types of baits, you're just gonna boost the action on your lure. It might sound like a pretty insignificant thing, but if you are trying to advance as a musky angler, I highly recommend keeping this in mind. This next mistake is something that you might overlook as a beginner musky angler, but any advanced musky angler will tell you that moon phases make or break musky fishing at times. So if you aren't already, pay attention to those moon phases. We're talking moon set, moon rise, moon majors, moon minors, all of the above. Each and every one will have an impact on muskies. Other things like the new moon and full moon always have an impact on muskies. In fact, the full moon is probably one of the best windows you can get out there to catch big fish. That has been a proven fact for me, especially with one of my biggest muskies coming in the middle of the night during a full moon. And on the flip side of things, the new moon has been very effective with me with having some of my greatest windows of musky fishing ever happening during the new moon. So If you are just kind of getting into it, you might overlook those things or kind of think that that sounds a little far-fetched, but when you look into it, and also your time in the water will begin to tell you that those moon phases have a massive impact on the behavior of these fish. So it's something that you should be keeping in mind if you are trying to advance as a musky angler. Our fourth mistake is something, again, that you might overlook or might not pay attention to at first, but that is using the right reel speed for the right type of lure. In my eyes, there's 3 reel speeds on the market. There's slow, medium, and fast, and each and every one of those, again, is going to have a place much like the leaders. Now, if you're a beginner musky angler and you slapped on a big bucktail and threw it out there, you probably noticed that it was probably really tough to reel in. And you probably asked yourself, well, how would I throw this the entire day? And the answer to that is actually using a slower speed reel. A slow speed reel is going to allow you to retrieve those high resistant baits much more effectively. If you guys want a more in-depth video on reels, I have one linked right here again. But the long and short of it is slow speeds are better for the high resistant baits. High speeds are better for your pull pause baits to catch up onto that slack, or perhaps small bucktails when you really want that speed. And of course, that middle of the road is great for things like swim baits, medium-sized bucktails, top waters. And part of this is always going to be personal preference. So you might prefer something different than I prefer, but that's just kind of the rule of thumb that I follow. Finally, this last mistake is a bit more common sense, but if you aren't doing it, this will help you. But that is simply just logging your information, whether it's writing it down in your phone, logging waypoints on your graph, or writing a fishing journal like I used to do. Gathering information and paying attention to that information is going to allow you to become a better angler. You're going to notice similar things in the data that you log that is going to allow you to replicate things in new bodies of water. If I didn't log my information for the first 3 years that I musky fished, I would not be where I am today. Logging that information, keeping in mind the time of day, the weather, the moon phases, all of the above is going to allow you to get more comfortable and confident in recognizing the fish behavior from muskies. So if you're struggling, start writing down, even if it's something like a follow or seeing a fish porpoise, write that down, pay attention to that information, because eventually when you have enough information there, you're going to notice some correlation with something, and it is going to allow you to get that new opportunity to catch one of these elusive fish. It's a pretty self-explanatory thing, but it's something to keep in mind if somebody's new to it and not really pay attention to something like that. I definitely think it is worth noting. Again, those are just 5 new mistakes that I see a lot in other people, and I also kind of battled with those mistakes as I started as an angler. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like or a comment and let me know something else you'd like me to cover this winter. Again, I'd really appreciate your subscription to the channel, as hopefully this winter I'm gonna have some great ice fishing content, as well as some more in-depth musky tutorials, such as this one. So with all that out of the way, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next one.